Thank you for tuning in to Enough Said Radio. And today is February the 3rd, 2023. And I am your host, Ms. Mama Storm 110, aka Latoya Shari.
And I am Tree.
And I am Joby. It is Friday. It's Mama Storm. Who is our special guest today? Let us know.
Yeah, girl. We have a special guest today, and she's my friend, also my ex-coworker and author, Miss Rachel Black.
Hi, Rachel. Welcome in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank y'all so much for having me on.
You are so welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We're going to get into the tea. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. We'll find out how you write them books, girl.
Since we have Rachel Black here talking about her process and her journey of being an author, you guys in the chat can also ask questions throughout the show if you want to. All right.
Yes, and I know Benaya should have some questions, I believe.
Yeah. Well, let's get started on this conversation.
Yes.
What do we got, Miss Marvel Storm?
All right, fam. So, Miss Rachel, girl, you are my ex-coworker, and we worked at the Boys and Girls Club together, right? So, before we get into the tea about the books, because I know you're on your journey, you're being an author, you're doing your thing, what made you even want to go into education or into teaching? Is it your love of books?
I wouldn't really say that it was my love of books specifically. It was kind of, I went to college for history, and that was one of the options, is you could get a provisional certificate to teach social studies or history. So I thought I would try teaching.
Right.
And I realized I really like working with kids. I'm very passionate about what influences they have going on in their life, because I'm going to tell you, the influences they have now are way different than what I had when I was a kid.
Yes, girl. Yes.
So that was a really important thing. But yeah, I like working with kids. I do it at the Boys and Girls Club. I did it as a teacher and a substitute teacher, and I volunteer with the youth group at my church.
Okay, girl, you teaching all the babies, the church babies, and the boys and girl babies. Yes. So, because everybody has a story, they have a starting point, a backstory, if you will. Je ne sais quoi, So, what made you even want to read books? Or want to write books in the first place? Did you write poetry? I mean, what was your starting point?
When I was a kid, I watched TV with my family like everyone else. I had a couple shows I really liked, but I didn't really like waiting every week, when you actually have to wait every week, for the next episode. So I would watch one episode, and then I would spend 2 hours in the bathtub writing the next one. Just really weirding my mom out, because she passes by the bathroom door and her kid is just talking. And I guess that's kind of where my writing started. I made up stories for Barbie dolls and baby dolls. And I remember in elementary school, we had a writing assignment in language arts where we had to write about a gift in a box.
Right.
And mine was actually about Jesus being in the box.
Whoa.
And,
I was thinking like a puppy in a box, and Jesus in a box.
Well, when your grandpa's a Southern Baptist minister, you don't stray far from that.
Okay.
But
understand.
But not to get too deep into that. But no, my teacher sent it home. I started liking the idea of writing, and later on, in 4th grade, I had a teacher in social studies teaching us about history, and I fell in love with history. things that had already happened. I was really interested in like social history and the way people lived. That fascinated me.
Right.
And she did this unit on the Revolutionary War, and I became obsessed. And then she read us a novel called Johnny Tremaine, which is set in the Revolutionary War, and that was the point when I realized that you could marry history, things that actually happened, to fiction.
Right.
And kind of write your own historical world. So from there, I just absorbed history books. I wrote everywhere, usually on the back of math homework I didn't want to do.
That sounds like me.
And then the teacher's like, well, I can't give you a math grade for this.
But you did write well.
Yeah. And that was the process, like going through different phases, learning different writing skills, but that's pretty much how I got into reading and writing.
So we can get right into your book. So in the background here, we have like a cover of it, I believe, and Saint Christopher Bound to the Past. And
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what this book is about? How did you come up with like the process of the title? Who the characters are? You know, like what's in it?
Okay, so the first thing the first thing I'll have to say is that when I started writing this, I was taking a medieval history class.
Ooh,
And
okay.
that kind of became like my favorite era in history. And I got really excited about the concepts of royalty and knights. So I wanted to write my own story featuring those. And at the same time, I was kind of like, wait, this is an opportunity for me to kind of step into whatever historical fantasy that I want to.
Right.
Like, what are my wildest dreams as a history buff? And I'd read another book. It's a book series called Croak. I'll give a shout out. By Gina D'Amico. And it's actually about a town of Grim Reapers.
Oh.
It's a young adult book, but it was really interesting, and I like the concept of there being like this secret town. So St. Christopher is about a secret town of town travelers in the North Carolina mountains, and all the shenanigans they get up to.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like something my husband would actually read because he's into medieval stuff. We're reading one. We started reading one months ago. I can't even remember what the title is, but he loves this stuff. So, when is this book going to come out so we can start reading it?
We are aiming for the beginning of March.
Okay.
I'm finishing up edits, and then I have to format it to publish it on Amazon and KDP.
Girl, yes, know about the KDP.
When you say publishing, are you is it self-publishing, I assume, or?
Yes.
Okay. So you can kind of create your own path. It's not someone telling you, "Hey, you got to do this," or "I don't like that art cover." You just kind of create your own way.
Right. And that's why self-publishing, I think, is becoming much more popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's boding well for publishing houses anymore because people can just bypass a lot of the rejection and giving up their own creative choices.
Right.
Right.
So you mentioned Amazon. Is that because I saw that before when I was trying to write my book 8 years ago, and they have like their own, like Amazon has their own place where you can publish your own books. Is that what you're talking about? Where you're gonna publish yours?
Yes. I think it's KDP is Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay.
That's what it is. Yes.
I think Kindle is owned by Amazon.
Yes.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
But I know there's some more companies doing a similar thing. I think Barnes and Noble is actually opening up a similar service too.
What?
Oh, nice. I love Barnes and Noble. That's like my
Me
happy
too.
place.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck
So I
up.
don't know. I don't know what all their requirements are, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's nice. So how does that for people that don't know, like how does that Amazon Kindle thing work? Like say I'm just new, I'm like, oh, I have all these poems or I have all these writings, I want to get a book out and I just want to get it out there. Like what's the process with that? Do you have to pay for it? Is it free? Like is there like does somebody have to approve it? Like I don't know, I'm just asking all these questions. For someone who has no idea what they're doing, like how does that work?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I understand it, they do have a proofreader that reads it just, to make sure they're not producing any content that is damaging to Amazon, of course. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of restrictions for self-publishing. The main thing is you set up a specific account, and you set it up where any royalties go into that. I think there are some packages you pay some up front, but the ones I've looked at, they get a portion of the royalties in exchange. So you just get the part that they're not entitled to.
Okay.
The other part is advertising, which is the big thing, and the keywords. I was told that picking the right keywords so people find you quickly.
The algorithms.
Is a huge thing.
Yes.
Because you don't want to pick generic keywords that everyone is using and you just get lost in the sea.
So we have somebody in the chat that commented, got to love being able to network without the middlemen.
Right.
Yes, but what I think you're talking about, like a publishing company.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're really good for some people. But from what I've heard from some other authors, is there's a lot of creative choices that can get taken away from you.
Right.
I don't think the author usually has much influence on the book cover. And of course, you have an editor assigned by the publishing company that can tell you, you can't have this in your book, or I want you to do this differently. And you may not agree with that creatively.
Right.
We also have a question from somebody named Villain. Do you plan to move your book to audiobooks so I can listen while I drive?
Yes.
There you go.
So that got excited.
I've actually, Audible will let you do that, which is my favorite app. I'm on Audible all the time for books, and it comes out cheaper, honestly. But we've looked into some different options for that. I use a website for outsourcing some services like narrators. It's a website called Fiverr.
Yes.
And I highly recommend Fiverr for any kind of freelance service that you want to try that you maybe don't want to pay a big corporation for.
They have so many things.
And you have an opportunity too to actually meet some unique creators themselves.
I agree.
Networking, for sure.
Yeah. And that's where I went for my book cover, and I have no regrets about that. But yes, long answer short. I am very interested in doing the audio version. Previously, I worked with a nonprofit that specialized in assisting individuals with disabilities, and visual impairments were a big thing. So I would definitely want to make sure that my work is as accessible as it can be.
Okay.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you be the one to do the recording?
I was gonna say
exactly the way you would want it to sound,
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I would do it. But there are some interesting narrators that I've listened to samples from on Fiverr. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bridgerton series.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, I guess it's the whole question everyone has at this point. But I've listened to the whole thing on Audible, and I'm obsessed with that particular narrator's voice.
Really? I need to listen to that.
I'm sure at this point she would be like, she would cost a fortune, but
Yeah.
Right.
I think in my head I hear her reading it.
Ooh, I'm starting to like your book already.
I'm intrigued.
Me too. I want to know. I want to know more. So, how big is this book? How many chapters do you have? And
It is currently 23 chapters
okay,
and a prologue and epilogue.
nice. Has anybody else read it? Your family?
Mostly my husband and my mother-in-law. They were my first two beta readers. Mostly because they're both really big bookworms, really big readers.
Okay.
My husband is more of a reader than I am. And he's very opinionated about books.
Really?
That's a good thing though, like to have a critic there. That's,
Yes.
you know,
Right, and it's turned into a really interesting dynamic because I will create this and then he will come back and he'll say, I know what you're trying to do here. He's like, I appreciate this. But I'm just thinking, like, for example, if you happen to want more 30-year-old men in your audience,
Mm-hmm.
put there. So also having a different perspective of a man in the work, I think is
Yes.
helpful too. But those two were my original readers. And I did work with an editor, but that's pretty much the extent people who have actually read the full thing.
And what do they think about it?
The editor really liked it, and that's one thing I would have to stress to anyone interested in writing, particularly if you're going to do fiction. Be prepared and be willing to invest in a decent editor if you can. I know that, money is an issue, and it certainly was for me, but having that third party to sit down with your work and give you an idea of how a reader is going to view it. Because when you read your own work, you instinctively fill in a lot of gaps.
Great.
So having someone kind of point out those plot holes or places you can expand on. Or, if you like me, you really like when they tell you that you did good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can we get back to that part?
Yeah, I don't like what you just said there. Let's just it's the good stuff.
Yeah. My husband, he was the first one to read it, but he really loved it. He is, if I'm being honest, he is probably one of the only reasons that it is anywhere near completion. Because I did not start this with any intention of publishing. And then he read it. He's like, this is as good as some of the stuff I buy.
Oh wow.
Whoa,
That's so cool.
Rachel.
I think it's
Okay.
such a great dynamic that you guys have. Like obviously there's a love for books there, but for him to actually sit there, critique your work, and you guys, it's almost like a team
Honestly,
in a way.
yeah, critique
Like,
it
that's
honestly.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's definitely a creative team. And he's also a history person. So he's also kind of like my research assistant.
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're different kinds of history. I'm more like social and political. And he's more the military and ancient history. So we both kind of sit in each other's gaps.
That's awesome.
Wow.
But like sometimes I want to slap him. I was like, are you really making me write this passage? Like,
Speaking of like
I'm not happy with this.
Speaking of like critiquing and editing, so like obviously there's 23 chapters. Does it come overnight? How long did it take for you to say get the prologue, and then just get each chapter, the words, or like for me, I feel like I know what I want to say, but I can't put it on paper, and then all these words are muddled, and I don't have a kind of chronological order or order of my story, so it's hard for me to put everything that makes sense. How does that writing process work? I know it's different for everybody, but for you, how does that work? How did that work with creating this book?
Well, part of the reason that it has taken me so long, I think I'm going on 8 years, but I really did not start writing with a specific process or regimen, and I highly recommend that. I will most definitely be going into the next book with one.
Okay.
But for me, it started. I would sit down and I would kind of think of specific things I wanted to happen or I wanted to see, and I would like just leave those out on the page, and then I'd sit back and I was like, how do I make this all make sense? How can I have all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can't.
Right.
But it pretty much just started scene by scene and piecing it in. Unlike some authors, I don't have like a very clear mental image of everyone and everything. When I do characters, I've tended to focus a lot more on personality and what concept or what feeling I want them to give the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I work on that first, and then I come back and I try to make the physical characteristics complement that. Or I make them like a celebrity crush.
You know? Fantasy!
But I mean, I don't have like super good clear mental images, so I work a lot off of models. It pretty much for me started with the plot points, and those changed over time as I came across different things in history that I wanted to include. But that's where it started. I mean, it was a really messy, like snowflake chart, like like elementary school kids do. Like that doesn't make any sense. But it's supposed to lead to something.
Right. Hey, I guess if you have to start that way, just to get ideas and your thoughts down, and now
I think that's kind of the best way to start if you don't already have a very specific plot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a way to get that going, so you can start thinking about plots.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And does just a quick question about your book. Is there romance in this book?
Oh, Tree needs a romance, y'all.
Yes, but it is not a romance novel.
Right.
I'm not a typical romance novel in that I'm very fond of slow burn romances in books. Like I don't like books where the romance is like the sole conflict.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read books like that before. I think sometimes you need to as a woman, or maybe men. But the books that I love the most, they have romance, but there's a lot going on as well.
Okay, so it sounds like to me that there's a lot of action in this.
Yes.
Okay, so what would happen if it was somehow, it became very popular and it was to be turned into a movie? What would you think about that?
I would really love that. I think it would probably make a better series than a movie.
I was going to say, like, it would be something that would continue. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, not just that, but I think there's a lot in it that you have to be stripped out to fit it in the span of 2 hours.
Which usually happens with books and movies.
Yeah, and
They add stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there.
Right.
Yeah, I have a problem with that, like when they add stuff in just for shock value that doesn't necessarily complement or is not very productive to the story, the plot.
Right. Well, hopefully when that day comes, you'll have a lot of say during production, you tell them what to do. My husband actually gave me this book that we're reading now. It's called Falling Kingdoms.
What?
So, yeah.
Oh, it's good.
It has a lot of action, and there's a little bit of romance, but yeah, that's the kind of books he likes, so I think we'll definitely have to get your book once it's out. I think he'll like it.
Yes.
I do want to tell you that, speaking of romance,
Yes.
if you do read it and you get frustrated that it's taking so long to get there, you can blame my husband. Because like I would write this, and I knew like these characters are gonna end up together. I'm gonna have this woman. He's like, you cannot do that in chapter 1.
Oh,
You gotta let it.
And he has a point. Like, the best ones, like I've never been a fan of stories where there's like insta love.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that happens sometimes, but
Right.
But he did a lot of that, and I really appreciate his influence on the pacing of that, because I think that was one of the things I would have written more gratuitously about, is just like go straight to what I necessarily wanted, instead of putting more consideration into how it was going to fit overall.
Wow.
I love it.
Awesome.
I'm so excited for this.
And I have a question.
Yes.
Because we're on books. So if you had to pick your top 5 books, and it could be any genre, anything from your childhood to present to anything, what would they be?
I'm gonna stick with fiction.
Okay.
My top books would be The Princess Bride. That will always hold a special place. And I think that writing style and that feeling behind it is kind of lost to history in some ways at this point. But it is wonderful by William Goldman. The other one would be a series called Clan of the Cave Bears. And that's by Jean Arel. That's a really interesting novel about Neanderthals and kind of their life with actual, Homo sapiens, humans. But the interesting thing is the way she wrote it. It's extremely detailed. You can tell she did an amazing amount of work. So that's 2. There's a book I like called Tooth and Claw by Joe Walton. And it's kind of like Pride and Prejudice meets Game of Thrones without the HBO.
Ooh.
And I really like that.
That would be down my alley.
Yeah. And it's very clean. Like, it would be a good family book.
Okay.
But I really like that. I will devour anything by Jane Austen.
Oh, okay.
I think at the moment, Sense and Sensibility is my favorite.
Mhm.
I also like anything by the Bronte sisters. Wuthering Heights is the most known one, but I think the underrated gem is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall.
Okay.
And I think I gave you 5 books. Is that 5 books?
Yeah, you do. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't read a book in a long time. I mean, I haven't even finished this one.
Yeah, I'm just like bouncing back through books. I'm like more of a psychological thriller person. So right now I'm reading The Silent Patient. I haven't finished that.
That one was good, but the pacing was kind of slow for me.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I heard that. Like, it was like, pick it up. And yeah, I just go from book to book. I'm like bad with books. Like I'll start one and then I'll start another one and I'm like in between books. But yeah, psychological thrillers are my thing.
Miss Marvel Storm, have you read any books lately?
The last book that I've been working on was a poetry book by Hans Christian Andersen.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's the last that I'm still working on that because I've been between that and art and everything else. But that is the last one I've been working on.
Right. And Miss Marvel Storm also has a book or a couple books published as well. I don't know if you know that, Rachel.
Yes, you did mention that to me. I'm actually interested in finding that on Amazon.
I got you. I'll give you the link. It's a poetry book as well.
Give us the
I'll
link.
give you the link.
Give us the link.
I give you the link. Girl, so I'm hoping that when that book comes out, you can go ahead and maybe give us a little book read. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, like a chapter or something.
Yeah,
We put it like a little podcast, you know?
Yeah.
That would be cool, actually.
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our time here, and I had a great time learning about books, how to publish them, your process. Is there anything that you would like to say more on like advice on how to like pick a good editor or how to start just writing if anybody is interested or in the process of writing their own book.
So what I would, the biggest piece of advice that I would give, that I think I wish someone had told me early on, the first is that read everything you can. Books are, we absorb things from books. Sometimes it's style, sometimes it's genre, sometimes it's some plot beats or, character arcs that we like. But that's the first thing, read. Particularly, I think you should invest your time in reading books in the genre that you want to write in. That was one of the big things for me is by the time I started writing this, I had kind of graduated out of young adult. So I went back and I started reading some of the current young adult, and I was like, this is not what I was reading. Then I had to really think about, would I be comfortable if my nieces sat down and read this?
Right.
That's a good question.
Am I comfortable with this message being associated with me?
Right.
Is it going to do something positive? But read. I would also say enjoy the process. Try not to make it so much of a job. That
good advice.
That's advice for anything.
That is good advice.
But if you put too much, I think if you put too much pressure on anything, you start to hate it.
Right.
And I've done that. Like I had times where I would write, and then I would be just completely burnt out and have to take time away from it because nothing I was writing when I was burnt out was decent.
Mm-hmm.
It was really just like, I am writing this to write this. And you don't want to do that. The other tip that I would give is if you have your plot in mind, I recommend investing in the cover early, which is something I hadn't realized, but me getting the book cover, I think really got me back into it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a small reward that I gave myself for getting to the point I was. It's, I had my manuscript, and then I gave myself like the outward view of my work to look at. And that was very rewarding. It gives you something to work harder for.
Oh, yeah, I bet. We do have a question in the chat by Rio. He asks, when did you realize that you wanted to become a writer?
Hey, Rio. So I think I decided I wanted to become a writer in elementary school. Like when I started writing in like the English class, and I started reading because I opened up a book, and it's like somebody sat down here and they came up with all this. I think that's kind of powerful. Like who has time for that?
Right.
I think that's when I wanted to be a writer, but I don't think I made the connection to trying to do it, professionally until I was in college. Because there's a lot of stigma, like, starving artist.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of books that are dead in the water. And that's always a possibility, but I think the desire to write always needs to be bigger than your fear of failing. If you're writing to succeed, you'll have no guarantees to work towards.
Excuse
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, guys? Did you hear that?
Everybody in the chat room.
I heard
Quote
it.
it, please. Zane, where you at? Quotations, please.
Yeah, I had in a writer group that I'm in on Facebook, this person wrote, I want to be as big as J.K. Rowling, or I want to be as big as Stephen King. And it's like, that is specifically what you're writing for. That would be great. I mean, I would like J.K. Rowling money.
Right.
Like, I would like just like one chapter's worth of her money. But Yeah, I mean, the intention behind it, I think, has to be more than just, wanting to be known or wanting to make a lot of money.
Yes.
I think if you write specifically for that, it loses what it's supposed to have. That's why you have veteran writers who will turn out novels very quickly. And they do that just because their name sells and they don't necessarily need the story anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really disappointing because they'll also be like $30. And then you realize, this is not a $30 book.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a real question, because
None of these are real. This is all
Hey, look, Miss Mom once said
She always
Joey's questions. No, we're getting to the real questions now.
shut it down. Let's get to the real interview. No, I was gonna say, like, I wanted to ask you a little bit of a question that may be a little bit more in depth and a little bit more deep. At least I think, because my brain is hopped up on Mountain Dew in my head.
Well, dang.
I wanted to ask, because for me, when I started writing poetry or when I started writing music, it was an outlet. It was something to get away from something. I had bullies, I had drama, I had, household issues, and I wanted this to get away from it. And I was asking, is that a part of the reason why you started writing?
That's a really good question because I do understand that a lot of artists of all different kinds, they turn to their art as an escape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily feel like I turn to mine as an escape. I think for me specifically, I like the idea that in this one way, I could be heard and say exactly what I wanted to say. And I think I've always really enjoyed sharing my perspective. And just a little fun fact, I was born with a rare genetic disorder that, only 2% of baby girls with it survive to birth.
Oh.
So I've spent my whole life explaining to other people what my disorder is, Turner syndrome, and so I think that gave me a desire to control narratives in a way, and I think it made it very precious to me to have those moments where I could speak freely. So I think for me, writing has always been a tool of expression, not necessarily an escape, but I did use it to escape math. So.
Yes, a lot of people use it to escape math.
Algebra was
We
traumatic.
know all about math.
I had post-traumatic math disorder.
I think I do too.
Crazy.
Hello.
You know me. Hello, Kaloni. You know me in math. Somebody commented, Old Pony said most famous authors are dead.
There is truth to that. And that's something I kind of found out in my research. But if you think about some of the most recognized names, they are usually authors that have already passed away, for sure. And my historical research on some of my authors, they didn't always get recognition or fame while they were alive, especially women. Like Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, they made a little money, but they were by no means famous or wealthy off their work. You do have the shooting stars that are J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, and James Patterson, but I think it's also important for people to realize that is also those are outliers too. There are a lot of authors that aren't necessarily making millions, but they're feeding themselves on their work. Also, your connections as to who you can get to promote your book makes a big difference.
Right.
Because, obviously everyone wants to be recommended by Oprah.
Yeah.
Right, she does have her own book
Reese
club.
Witherspoon's book club.
Yes.
But yeah, connections are really important. particularly, and more so I think in today's day and time, because it's much easier for us to make those connections with social media and technology than it was back then.
It is easier, but you have to make them first.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are afraid to go out and talk to people.
And that's an interesting point is, I think artists, maybe even specifically writers, are notoriously introverted. So, I am very much an introvert. And that's something that has kind of changed over time. Originally, it took my husband a long time to convince me to start talking to other people about St. Christopher. And I was like, why would I do that? He's like, because if you tell them, they might read it.
Right.
I don't like people.
I feel it. I'm a selective introvert. I am a selective introvert. That's what I call myself.
Yes. Yes. As soon as Rachel told me, I was like, okay, come on. As soon as like the second, okay, you can be on the podcast. Let's go.
Yes, Rio, I see your comment in the chat. I'm an introvert.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you kind of have to be, to be able to spend that much time internally creating things. You have to have some propensity or skill at shutting other people out. I've gotten better at it. I mean, it's not everyone thinks that's why God invented publicists. Maybe you can have one. But yeah, again, props to my husband for forcing me out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, props to him. What a great husband. So supportive, and oh man, we need someone like that on our side. Kaloli in the chat asks, how long did it take you to write your book?
I think we're going on about 8 years.
Wow.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I don't have the exact date that I started. I know I was in college. I was married. So 7 or 8 years. And from there, I kind of, like I said earlier, I didn't have a routine, which I think is part of what slowed me down. That and just life is busy.
Oh yeah.
It is busy.
And especially when you're working and going to school at the same time. And you're still kind of learning how to be married. So it was a growing process, but I think that's also another big piece of advice. If you're going to commit, try to set yourself on a routine, if you can.
Yeah.
That's not teachable to everyone, but even if it's, even if all you can do is sit down for 30 minutes and just plot or create characters, that is something. None of it is in vain.
We have some people in the chat saying that's dedication to your dream. Like I'm with Rio, I would not have the patience. I'm just like, chapter 1, 2 years, yeah, I'm just gonna lay that.
Well, I was telling you before you got on.
I get it though. Like if you have this passion and you really put all, it doesn't matter the timeline.
Right.
As long as you're moving forward to progress and, get it done and finish. So the ultimate goal is to finish, right? So, props to you for
I know. Before we got on the show, I told you that I started writing my book 8 years ago, and I still only did the first chapter. So props to you. Oh my goodness, I could have finished a book right now, guys. I've been talking with you.
Well, to your credit, I've heard of an author. I wish I could remember her name, but she graduated with a creative writing degree in the 70s. And then she was 70 years old before she published her first book.
And you're never too old.
Take time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I agree. Rio asks, were you procrastinating at all?
Okay, Rio.
She gets it.
She gets that same energy I was giving.
She gets exactly. She gets how Rio is. She gets how Rio is.
So what I like to say is I was pro-Rachel. Those times where I had to step back and get myself back in the mood to write. Because like I said, I think if you're writing and you don't have, and you're trying to do it when you don't really have any desire, I don't think it turns out nearly as well.
Okay.
Because, that's the hallmark of a great book is when you can read it and you can tell that the writer sat there and was invested into the word choices and the plot and characters. Instead of just throwing things on the page.
So I have one last question for me. Going back to like the medieval part of the book and the action part, and I know you said your husband is he does research and stuff for you too. Did you have to do a lot of research though, based on this time period of your book?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. Because I want to do two things. The first is that part of my history degree is learning some research skills. Learning how to both find information, what sources to go to, and also how to give them credit. So for the medieval period, I focused a lot on a book. It's actually called The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England. And it's by an Englishman named N. Mortimer. And he's done like a whole series of time travelers' guides to England at different periods. But that was a lot of my research for the medieval stuff in book one.
Right.
But I do want to point out that we're not staying in the medieval era. I intentionally filled the town with, just companions and time travelers that go all kinds of places. We have ninjas and samurais, and then we also have Zulu warriors.
We have it all around the continent.
Yeah, and I really like that's part of what I really liked was that kind of diversity and the openness that you had of things you could explore. You're not really boxing yourself in as much. As far as like the fight scenes and things like that, I am obviously you can't see all of me, but I am not a Ronda Rousey. I like watching fight scenes, but I ain't never done that.
Okay.
My theory is, you mess with my niece, you'll go meet Jesus, but I might have to go with you. But you don't go.
Amen.
Yeah, my husband is also former military, and that is kind of his bread and butter. He loves martial arts. So I would write things, and I'd have the protagonist do certain things. He's like, you do realize that that's physically impossible.
Not to me, it's my book.
But this 5-foot untrained woman do not take on a 6-foot Viking. And I'm like, it's my book.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that is a good point because I think that's also an important part of the research is, making sure the physicality of your characters is consistent with them. What they're supposed to be like. But yeah, he had me watch all kinds of YouTube videos of women fighting. I have a couple books on that. But his influence on that part in particular was invaluable. His nickname is actually Battle Axe. When he was in the Air Force, he was a part of the SCA, which is a group, Society of Creative Anachronists. Like, they dress up in historic clothing and they have these mock historic battles.
Wow.
And he was a knight that was fighting with a group of Vikings. And he brought his axe down too far and dislocated his shoulder. So so he's very proud of that name. That's also like his conversation piece. He's like, he's like, my shoulder's so sore.
Bring it up.
Oh my goodness, Rachel, your husband and my husband will get along so well. I'm telling you.
But I mean, and that's part of it too. It's really interesting how I think when you're writing specifically, learning to use all the influences that you've had. Luckily, I was put with him, and he had a lot of martial arts and military history things to add. I had some, but I definitely wasn't as focused on, how to throw the right hook or how does a ninja disappear. And he's like, oh no, you do it this way. So, yeah, he's my medieval military expert guy.
I love it.
And we're gonna sway. We're gonna wind down a little bit. We're gonna sway from the writing and stuff. Rio had some questions in the chat. We're gonna call rapid fire questions for Rachel. So the first one was, Rachel, do you like Mountain Dew Baja Blast flavor? ?
No, and it is offensive to my husband.
Oh, well, there you go. Ooh, snap.
There you go, Rio.
Bam. Okay. And he says, Rachel, who's your favorite Backstreet Boy member?
Oh my gosh.
Ooh. Nick.
I'm about to say you.
Okay. And Rachel, how do you like your steak?
Medium.
Okay. I know that one. And Rachel, do you like Dunkin'? Or are you more of a Starbucks girl? Dunkin'. She whispered. Dunkin'.
Yep, she whispered that.
And she said, Rio says, if you had a chance to hang out with any rapper, who would it be?
Honestly, I don't listen to a lot of rap.
Okay.
My mom and I did get really into the Black Eyed Peas at one point.
Okay.
Birdie sounds interesting.
She said interesting.
I feel like there'd be a lot of really interesting conversation in that. But maybe Toby Mac, he is actually a Christian rapper, which is interesting.
Oh yeah.
And he says, do you even Netflix and chill, Rachel?
Netflix, but I don't chill. I never learned how to chill.
She says she Netflix, but she don't chill.
No chill. No chill.
No chill.
I know what men mean by chill.
Oh, she knows, Rio. She knows. Oh my goodness. Rachel, you have been amazing. I love your energy. You're so, your story, I love your story. You're so fun. You're so honest. So thank you so much. But I know I said I had one last question, but can you tell us a little bit about the book? What's in the book? Just a little
slivers.
Something.
I was waiting on that. So, as I mentioned, it's about the town of time travelers. It's called Saint Christopher, who is the patron saint of travelers. But in the town, there are different. I lost the word. But there's a very specific social hierarchy, right? You have your duke, you have your travelers, your companions, and your seers who see the past but don't travel. And then you also have your refugees who are brought forward for specific skills. So that's kind of the hierarchy. But there's also a group of travelers that are kind of outcasts. They're called rivers, because they actually have the ability to change past.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stigma around them. So the first book is kind of introducing that stigma and then kind of coming back and saying, are stigmas really valid? Is this stigma really valid? So, but the town is really fun. For Rio, I will add, we have a bar fight, with the ninja.
Rio?
There you go, Rio.
Question.
Ninjas, samurais, gals, healer warriors, they all get in a fight. Which is really interesting. It's my husband's favorite part.
Okay.
Wait.
I wonder why.
Question. Okay, 2 questions. Would you live in this town?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I actually can get employed.
Okay. And who would you be in this town?
Well, obviously, that is a really good question, because some of the things that I've come across in research have made me decide that I do not want to time travel.
Okay.
But if I could have like a cushy historian job where I do the research for the travelers, I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
For example, the main character, Alice Fitzrichard, she goes on her first mission. They go on missions as travelers, and things do not go as planned. And it quickly becomes obvious that she is not made to, listen to the Duke. She cannot do it. And at the same time, her companion is also kind of a secret rebel. And she has a snarky friend in town that's a seer that sees into the past. Because of the hierarchy, she's not supposed to really mess with seers because they can work together, collude. But she does anyways. So it's a lot about, the first book I think is a lot about her coming into herself as a traveler, deciding how she's going to respond to what the town and the Duke have told her is her duty or her job. And then realizing that things may not be exactly what she thought.
All right.
That's your cliffhanger to buy the book when it comes out.
When it comes out. And Rachel, please let us know when that comes out, and so we can let everybody know.
Absolutely.
$49.99. Oh my God! So
We already know.
not the banging.
I mean, support the artist for real. Like, support the artist. Not only money, but time is spent on it. Obviously, she's worked hard on this, and it didn't obviously come overnight. And there's a lot of thought process and obviously a lot of research too, because there's no way in hell I'm going to be learning about this and that and then putting a book together. So that's really, really dope that you can come with that, and especially collab and then just do your research. With your husband part of it, it's just, I don't know, that's so dope. I love it.
I'm already just knowing you. I'm already excited to read the book. Like,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
I will say, there is a cliffhanger, so be prepared if you read it to be excited for a second one, maybe a third. I have at least a trilogy planned, so
Okay.
we will see if I can actually say everything I want to say in 3 books, but I like to talk.
Well, if this book comes out and it is a hit, make sure you pop those other books real quick, because people will be like, where is the next one?
That is the worst. Like, an author releases a book and then they're like, year 1, no second book. Year 2, we're just starting it. It's like, no, I've invested my money, my time, and I've sacrificed things for this. You need to write.
Like now, like yesterday.
Like, here's my email. Just send it to me.
Right.
I appreciate Ria, and I appreciate y'all having me on.
Of course.
It's been a lot of fun to talk about the book. I hope that maybe some that were listening that are maybe nervous about writing or interested in learning a little more about the process, I hope they got a little inspiration from it.
I sure did. I sure
Me
did.
too. Me too,
So,
girl.
thank you again for the
Thank you
100th
so
time.
much. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your show. Yeah, bum bum. Thank you so much. She's loving it, girl. She's ready for it. We appreciate you. We can't wait for this new book to come out in March, y'all. Super excited, Morning Campbells. And we hope to have you back on the show when your book comes out and get a little book club.
Launch your website.
Yes,
I would
launch.
love that. I will definitely keep in contact.
Yes.
We'd love that.
We would love that. So, all right, Rachel, we'll let you go. Have a great night. Thank you so much for your time.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Hey fam, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for further notifications. Don't forget to share it too. Smooches.
Bye.